Alright, so I've got this serger set up for just regular stitching, regular overlock 3-thread stitch, and I'm going to show how to set it up for a rolled hem. So right now I only have one needle in. I have the left needle in. So if you were using both needles, the first step to do, if you had both needles in, the first step would be to take out the right needle. This machine takes that uses this little hex driver. It's a 1.5 millimeter hex driver to change the needles. You loosen the screws here. I'll try not to block it. It's pretty clear. There's just two little holes there. And so this driver comes with the machine, and it's a nice solid driver. Don't use the incorrect tool. If you get those threads messed up on those heads of those tiny little set screws, the whole machine will be worthless. You can't replace those. Don't mess up those screws. I buy a driver like this off Amazon. It's just a 1.5 millimeter hex driver. But so if you find it easier to have a handle, you can buy one of these for like $8. But the one that it came with works fine. So sometimes you have to loosen both screws. So you get that, and then you take the one needle out. So you're only using your left needle. So I've already got that set up. So my next step, I'm going to chain that off a little bit here. My next step is going to be to remove the plate and the foot. So the foot to remove is easy. There's just a little button back here. You push that and it falls right off. And sometimes you might have to rotate the needle up or cut the threads. Oh, this just came right off. Alright, so we're gonna, while I got that off and I have some room to move, I may as well change out the plate. There's just two screws here, and you don't need to get these screws really tight. Again, use the correct screwdriver. If you ding this up, the heads on these screws, if you ding those up and get them all scratched up and dented, then when you run fabric, especially a sheer fabric, over the face of the machine here, you could potentially snag your fabric and not have a nice working surface. Don't lose those screws. So yeah, just use a regular screwdriver and be careful. There's no need to get those really tight. Now sometimes on this plate the thread chain will be tangled up. If you have to, you can always just cut those threads. So this is the regular needle plate. There's no mark on these. Usually there's a letter on some machines. There's no mark or anything to tell you, but the regular overlock plate has a stitch finger. You see this prominent metal finger coming out here? Maybe if I put it against there, yeah, you can see it better. Whereas the rolled hem plate just has this little thing that looks like a little needle sticking out, no stitch finger. So this is the one we want, the one with no stitch finger for the rolled hem. I don't want this thread to get caught in there, so I'm going to put this on here. Now, when you switch back, beware, this plate won't go on when the blade is moved to the other position. So if you try to switch back and you can't get this on, it's probably because you haven't moved the blade out yet. Just a heads up. I struggled with that a minute ago. Couldn't get this thing on. But that would be this. The rolled hem one will go on no matter what position the blade is in. It's going back to the regular that the plate won't want to slip in there because that blade will be in the way. So just change your blade first when you're going the other direction. Change the blade to the outermost position. We'll do that in a minute here. But let's get the foot on. So we've got the needle correct. We've got the left needle. We've got the plate on there, the correct plate, and now we're going to put the foot on. I couldn't find it. Okay, so the feet, this one is, you can actually tell pretty easily which one to use because the rolled hem foot has an R on it. That's helpful. By the way, all these instructions are on page 24 of the manual. So sometimes getting this foot in can be a pain. If you take the lifter and give it extra little push up, it'll give you just a little more height. And you just line up that little bar that slips on there. Once you get it lined up, you can just lower the foot, and then sometimes you have to give it a little push up. It's on there. Okay, I'll start with my threads to the back at 10 o'clock, so I'm going to get that set. Alright, so I have 2 more settings to do now. I've got the needle in the right position, the correct needle plate on, and 1 needle only, and I've got my correct rolled hem foot. So now I need to change the length. So when you're doing a rolled hem, as you can see here, it's a very dense stitch. So you want the length to be very short as opposed to a regular stitch that you generally have longer. So the length is down here. Move that a little bit here. There we go. The length is down here, and you just take this little bar, pop that out, and then you can move this, slide this to where you want it. I'm going to guess, I kind of got it a little closer to the 2 than the M. You just have to experiment. This is really going to depend on your fabric. If you start to do a rolled hem and it just won't feed and it's too bunched up, then make it a little longer. If you start to roll hem and the stitches are too spread out and you really want it to be denser and not have the fabric show through, then make it a little shorter stitch. Alright, I'm going to leave the differential feet at 1. I have one other change to make, and that is the blade width. So the cutting width, the blade position. So your stitch width is determined by the distance from your, whatever your leftmost needle is, in this case it's only this one, and the blade. And that's how wide, let me turn this a little better, that's how you determine how wide the stitch is. So we want to make this stitch narrower, so we're going to move this blade in. The serger has 2 blades, by the way. There's a moving blade. You see as you turn the wheel, see this blade here? This is the upper blade, and this is the moving blade, I should say. And some machines, they come up from underneath. But this one drops down, which makes it really nice for flimsy knits. So I'm going to roll this out of the way. The underneath here, this blade presses against the fixed blade. So there's 2 blades. There's one that moves, a moving blade, and there's a fixed or stationary blade. And the 2 blades work together like scissors. This one moves against the other blade, and it just like a scissors. That's how it cuts. So we got to move that fixed blade. Because this upper blade is pressed against there with a really tight spring, you can't move that blade without getting this out of the way. So you just push it and you rotate it. Sometimes you gotta move that to get it out of the way. So you just rotate that blade out of the way. You can do that for other sewing maneuvers too. And then there's a screw. Again, you use a correct screwdriver. There's a screw right here at the end of this little white arm thing. So you just loosen that, and then this whole mechanism, this whole plate that holds the blade, a little more, moves right to left. It also tips a little bit front to back, which we don't want, so we're going to keep that good. So you can see how you can move it right, left. It's probably hard to see the detail, but you'll see when you loosen that screw that this whole gray plate here slides right and left. So when I'm doing regular serging, I put it most of the way out, and then I back it off a little. So it's more out. It's not halfway. It's most of the way out. That's what I like. But you can change that. You can make your stitch wider or narrower, and then you have to adjust your tensions. By the way, my tensions for the regular overlock stitch here were 4, 4, 5.5, and I'm not using the right needle. So here, let me show that. So that this is irrelevant. But I had my tension set on 4, and there's a little line about 11 o'clock, that's what you line the number up to. You'll see a little groove in here. So that one's set at 4. This one I'm not using. Upper looper set at 4. Lower looper set at 5. So that's how I was doing that's how I had it set up, just to go through these 2 layers of cotton muslin. So anyway, where was I? So I'm changing the width. So if you change your width, sometimes you have to change your tension. A wider stitch takes more thread to wrap around, so you have to make it loosen the tension. So that's all in my guide, and that's general serging stuff you can study up on. So anyway, to do a rolled hem, I'm going to push this all the way in to the left. I'm pushing this gray piece, and see if you can see that, pushing this into here. And then I'm going to tighten the screw again. Now I've got to make sure that the blade is not tipped down. It wants to tip down as you tighten this, so you kind of have to hold it in position. This one you do want to get good and tight, because you do not want that hold this against here to press it good and tight. You do not want that blade to slip loose when you're serging and then have your needle or something hit. So now I got this blade all the way this way, all the way left, and now I'm going to swivel this other blade back down in there. Alright, so I've done everything but the tensions. There's 6 steps here. Out here. There's 6 steps to changing over to rolled hem. Change the plate, change the foot, make sure you got only your left needle in, change the length, change the width, and set the tensions. So I'm down to my last step. Now I already played with this a little bit, and what worked for rolled hemming for me was to put the left needle at 5.5, and I'm not using the right needle. The upper looper I had at 6, and the lower looper I had at 7. And that gave me a nice stitch. So on this fabric, which is one layer of a not super thin kind of crepe knit. So let's see how it works. Now when you start to serge and you've changed your setup, I moved the blade, I moved all kinds of stuff. I changed the foot, the needle plate. You always want to hand roll the wheel. Turn the hand wheel by hand before you step on the pedal, because if you just step on the pedal, you could have metal on metal, something could break because maybe you don't have something in the right way. So always do that. Always turn that hand wheel, and you'll prevent yourself from breaking the machine and breaking needles and causing damage. So we put the foot down. When you serge, you don't really need to put the foot up and down. You just leave it down, and then when you put the fabric on, you just lift the tip of the presser foot with your thumb and stick it under there. So now I'm going to hand wheel. The wheel goes this way. There's a little arrow there to show you it does not go toward you. It goes away from you. Some of the older sergers are like that. Alright, so I'm listening. Everything sounds happy. So I'm going to go ahead and try and see what this does. It's working. It looks good. It looks like it had a little bit of trouble getting started, but then so I could have used a leader ender or given it just a slight, very gentle tug from back. Not much, but yeah, the settings seem like they're working. I would never use regular thick thread for a rolled hem. It looks a lot better with a super fine thread. I like embroidery thread, polyester embroidery thread for rolled hem, but you can use any other really good quality fine thread. But a regular serger 2-ply like this is not a good looking thread. But anyway, that's just aesthetics. By the way, the light to this machine, there's a button right on top here. It's right. It's here. See if I can move this. It's behind there, just down on top of the machine, right down there. So anyway, I'm going to leave it set up for rolled hem, and it has all the other parts. It has the regular presser foot, needle plate, and all these other accessories set to go. Have fun. Bye.